Chapter 2455, World Descends. Chapter 2455, World Descends. I thought only mobs were supposed to come out. Why is the fortress's guardian boss out here, too? Why is this guardian boss so powerful? Shouldn't domain-class mythics be world bosses? The Starlight Behemoth's appearance shocked the Silver Lion Legion. The joy they had felt after seeing the Crimson Dragon flying ships might vanished when they saw the Starlight Behemoth's gigantic, translucent body. Now, only fear swam within them. Thus far, the various superpowers had only discovered a handful of domain-class mythic monsters, and every one of them was on par with a natural disaster. Those monsters could even guard an entire map. In fact, some level 90+ world bosses were merely domain-class mythics, and the various superpowers forces had proven ineffective against them. Even after relying on special items, they had been annihilated. A domain was simply unstoppable. This was why Tier 3 NPCs were no match for their Tier 4 counterparts, even when they outnumbered the stronger NPCs. Within another's domain, one's overall performance would suffer significantly. Just casting spells and activating skills became excruciatingly difficult within a hostile domain. One would be fortunate to exhibit 50% of their normal combat power in such a fight. To make matters worse, the domain would strengthen its user's overall performance, as well. Even in a fight between a Tier 3 NPC and a Tier 4 NPC of equal strength, the difference would be qualitative with a domain active. Needless to say, the difference would be even greater between Tier 3 players and a domain-class mythic. Commander, we need to retreat. Nobody can stop that domain-class mythic boss. If we don't run now, it'll slaughter us, the ruthless man from Stormheart shouted at his commander, Crow, when he saw the Starlight Behemoth. Not only was the Starlight Behemoth individually powerful, but its domain would also strengthen the army of 50,000 monsters. Such a force would have no issues taking down a guild city, much less the Silver Lion Legion's 8,000 members. With the fortress's elemental creatures focused on the Crimson Dragon flying ship, they had a chance to escape. If they waited until these monsters destroyed the ship and massacred the Legion, they'd be next. It seems our raid is impossible. Inform everyone to retreat, Crow commanded as he gazed at the Starlight Behemoth. He had wanted to linger to witness the historical moment the Starlight Fortress was captured, but that no longer seemed like a wise idea. Of the various superpowers he knew of, none could even defeat a level 90+ domain class, mythic ranked world boss, not even the 5 great super guilds. Meanwhile, the Starlight Behemoth was a level 113 domain class mythic boss. Starlight Behemoth, Toriand, Realm Lord, L, Starlight Creature, Mythic, Level 113 HP 4000000040000000000. Aside from the Starlight Behemoth's basic attributes, its 4 billion HP alone would be enough to inspire despair. With 4 billion HP, the Starlight Behemoth would regain 40 million HP every 5 seconds with its battle recovery. If players couldn't deal 8 million damage each second, their attacks would be utterly worthless against the monster. Tier 2 experts had a hard time dealing more than -10,000 damage to a level 100+ mythic monster, and their attacks would be even less effective against a domain-class mythic. Only Tier 3 players could deal more than -10,000 damage to such a monster. Assuming that a Tier 3 player could deal -20,000 DPS to the Starlight Behemoth, a team would need over 400 Tier 3 players to overcome the Guardian boss's battle recovery. Where was a power supposed to find 400 Tier 3 players at this stage of the game? Not even the Crimson Dragon flying ship would make much of a difference. Flying ships were war weapons. They might be useful against dumb mobs, but against a mythic monster that could fly, the ship would even struggle to land a hit. Furthermore, the Crimson Dragon flying ship's mana pulse cannons had very long cooldowns. To put it simply, it would only be limitedly effective against a domain-class mythic boss. While the Stormheart adventurer team fled, panic overwhelmed the Silver Lion Legion as they watched the Starlight Behemoth fly toward them. The Starlight Behemoth is too fast, Vice Commander. We won't have enough time to get everyone out of here safely. We'll have to leave some players behind to slow it down. Please, issue the command, Crimson Witch begged McCaffrey as she watched the Guardian boss approach. None of them had expected the Starlight Fortress to house a domain-class mythic. Shifeng had doomed them all. Since the situation had already become desperate, the only thing they could do now was figure out a way to reduce the Legion's losses as much as possible. The Silver Lion Legion was Divine Tribe's strongest force. If it were annihilated, the guild would suffer. It seems we have no choice. Hearing Crimson Witch's pleas, McCaffrey reluctantly pulled the Tier 4 hero summoning scroll from his bag. Current Tier 3 players had no hope of stopping a level 113 domain-class mythic. If none of them could stop the Starlight Behemoth, the Silver Lion Legion would be slaughtered. He had no choice but to rely on the Tier 4 hero to pin the Guardian boss down, buying enough time for everyone to escape. It might be possible to rely on the Tier 4 hero to raid the Starlight Behemoth if it were alone, but it wasn't. Not only did the Guardian boss have the support of 50,000 monsters, but its domain even strengthened the monsters around it. Not even 4 Tier 4 heroes could defeat this horde. While McCaffrey prepared to use the Tier 4 hero summoning scroll, Shifeng walked onto the flying ship's deck and quietly watched the Starlight Behemoth's army. Crap. He's not even going to run. Does he assume he can use his flying ship to get away? Maybe he's in denial. He was clearly hoping to capture the Starlight Fortress, but now that there's a domain-class mythic, his hopes have been dashed. The Silver Lion Legion's Tier 3 experts, who were panicking on the ground, were confused when they saw Shifeng on the Crimson Dragon flying ship's deck, appearing relaxed. The ship could fly and quickly, but its speed was nothing compared to the domain-class mythics. Once the flying ship, which relied on mana to remain in the air, was within the Starlight Behemoth's domain, its movement speed would plummet. If Shifeng turned the flying ship around and fled now, he'd have a chance of getting out of there alive, but if he waited until the ship got caught in the Guardian boss's domain, neither he nor his ship would escape. However, while the Silver Lion Legion's members wondered if the sudden development had dealt too much of a mental blow for Shifeng to handle, the swordsman pulled a golden ring from his bag. He raised the golden ring and began to chant an incantation. When Shifeng finished the chant, he revealed a faint smile as he glanced at the Starlight Behemoth's approaching mana field. He then sacrificed 5,000 magic crystals to the Ring of Gospel and activated Miniature World. The sky began to tremble as the phantom of a new world appeared above them all, separating the sky from the land. Everyone immediately sensed that their connection to the outside world had been severed, and a frightening pressure overwhelmed them. This pressure didn't originate from a single point, but assaulted them from all directions. They all felt as if they had just been plunged into a hostile plane of existence. As Miniature World activated, the Starlight Behemoth's mana field began to visibly recede. The mana that had previously submitted to the Guardian boss began to rebel. Rather than strengthen the Starlight Behemoth, it began to suppress the Realm Lord. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The Starlight Behemoth's basic attributes decreased rapidly. 5%. 7%. 10%. In just 3 short seconds, the Guardian boss's basic attributes had been reduced by 20%. As for the elemental creatures following it, not only had they lost 30% of their attributes, but their movement speeds and reaction speeds had also significantly decreased. Impossible. He shattered a mythic-ranked Realm Lord's domain. Crimson Witch exclaimed, her jaw hanging open as she watched the Starlight Behemoth's mana field vanish completely. Chapter 2456. Flying Ship vs. Starlight Behemoth. He destroyed the boss's domain and suppressed it. Chapter 2456. Flying Ship vs. Starlight Behemoth. He destroyed the boss's domain and suppressed it. What did he do? Crimson Witch wasn't the only player shocked to watch the Starlight Behemoth's domain shatter. No one could believe their eyes. They had never thought that Shifeng had such an ability. Current players were no match for a Tier 4 being's domain. Some superpowers had tried to use Tier 4 domain scrolls against true Tier 4 domains, but they had barely been a match for the beings they had fought. Some Tier 4 domain scrolls were even weaker, and the superpowers that had relied on them had been suppressed by their enemy's domain. In contrast, not only had Shifeng shattered the Starlight Behemoth's domain, but he had also suppressed the Guardian boss. It was unbelievable. When Miniature World activated, the Starlight Behemoth paused for a moment mid-flight. However, it then bellowed angrily, and its entire body began to radiate dazzling starlight. It was trying to expand its domain again and break free from miniature world. Unfortunately, no matter how much the starlight behemoth struggled, it couldn't escape the skill's effect. Mana control even has such a huge effect on magical items. Miniature world's results even stunned Shifeng. He hadn't actually expected the Ring of Gospel's skill to suppress a realm lord to such an extent. All tools were ineffective against world bosses. Players had to rely on their own power. However, the Starlight Behemoth was not a world boss, and thus, tools could be used against it. This was certainly a benefit since players couldn't use berserk skills in Star Valley. He had used Miniature World to suppress other mythic monsters, but until he had gained his mana body, he hadn't been able to use the mana concentrated within the Ring of Gospel. Now that he was a master magician as well, he, more or less, understood how the Ring of Gospel's magic arrays operated. He could now guide some of the concentrated mana into those arrays. Even so, he had never thought that the results would be this powerful. His only aim had been to destroy the Starlight Behemoth's domain. He hadn't dared to hope that Miniature World would suppress the Guardian boss, as well. The Ring of Gospel proved far more effective than when he had used it blindly before. Of course, after giving the matter some thought, Shifeng found it reasonable. He had already upgraded the Ring of Gospel to the fragmented legendary rank, and world power was already stronger than domains. Now that he could use some of Miniature World's true power, even if it were only a fraction, a Tier 4 domain was no match for him. Not even the Starlight Behemoth could resist this power, and could only watch as the ability suppressed its basic attributes. After this discovery, Shifeng snapped back to the battle and glanced down at McAfee below the flying ship. Vice Commander Afri, prepare to greet the enemy. Try to slow those mobs down as much as possible, especially the monsters that can fly. I'll deal with the boss, Shifeng shouted. This, McAfee could not help but hesitate as he turned back to the elemental creature's army. Disregarding the horde of Lord-ranked monsters, the army had over 100 level 110 plus Grand Lords. Even without the Starlight Behemoth's domain strengthening these elemental creatures, stopping so many high-level Grand Lords would be very difficult for the Silver Lion Legion's 8,000 members. Only Tier 3 players could tank those monsters, and the Legion only had 60 Tier 3 players. Before McAfee could say more, however, Shifeng sacrificed more magic crystals to the Ring of Gospel and activated Ring of Brilliance. Suddenly, everyone within a 2,000-yard radius felt a pleasant, empowering sensation spread through them. Their basic attributes and physiques improved by 20%, increasing their overall strength by a large margin. He has a strengthening domain tool, too? Crimson Witch was flabbergasted when she noticed the buffs the Silver Lion Legion had received. She found it simply unbelievable that Shifeng had both a suppressing domain tool and a strengthening domain tool. Normally, superpowers would be fortunate to have just one of these tools, yet Shifeng had both. Will that help? Shifeng asked. Not even Shifeng had a good solution for facing the 50,000-strong army of elemental creatures, and he still had an agreement with Divine Tribe that the Silver Lion Legion could retreat if they lost more than 30% of their manpower. However, if McAfee realized that they had no hope of winning this battle, he would give up before that, which wasn't the outcome Shifeng wished to see. I can't make any guarantees, but we'll try our best to stop those mobs, McAfee agreed. Feeling the Ring of Brilliance's effects, he decided to grit his teeth and fight. If the Silver Lion Legion retreated without putting up a fight after Shifeng had gone to such lengths to help them succeed, both the Legion and Divine Tribe would be humiliated. Even if he had to risk severe losses, he would try his best to stop the approaching elemental creature army. Good. I'll leave the rest to you. Just leave that Guardian boss to us. Shifeng was satisfied once he saw that McAfee was committed to this battle. He was already fortunate that the Silver Lion Legion, one of Divine Tribe's trump card legions, was willing to help. Shifeng then piloted his Crimson Dragon flying ship straight toward the Starlight Behemoth. What? Do they really intend to challenge the Starlight Behemoth? Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched the ship approach the Realm Lord. In the air, a flying ship had superb combat power, but that was only true against immobile objects and players. Flying ships weren't built to fight monsters. And yet, Feng's group was going to use the flying ship against the domain-class mythic. They had gone insane. Even stripped of its domain and with 20% less basic attributes, the Starlight Behemoth was far stronger than ordinary mythic monsters. Its 3.2 billion HP was more than enough to cause despair. While the Silver Lion Legion members considered the ship's odds of surviving, Aqua Rose raised her staff from the Crimson Dragon flying ship's deck and began to chant an incantation. Dark blue, twofold magic arrays began to appear around the Starlight Behemoth, one after another. Tier 3 Super Spell, Sea God's Grasp. Under her command, shackles of water closed around the Realm Lord, binding the Starlight Behemoth and holding it in place. Good. Fire the main cannon, Feng commanded. As soon as he did, the Crimson Dragon flying ship's magic elven cannon began to gather an astonishing amount of ambient mana. It then fired a searing hot, white beam, with a 200-yard radius, at the Guardian boss's head. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU boom. As the shot collided with the Starlight Behemoth's face, the forest below shook violently. The Silver Lion Legion's members almost lost their footing due to the shockwaves, even from several hundred yards away. As the white beam's light faded, it revealed a colossal crater in the previously dense forest. Flowers, grass, trees, even the elemental creatures that had been in that area left no trace of their presence, utterly obliterated. After a short moment, a gigantic figure fell from the sky and crashed into the crater's center, causing such an impact that it sent dirt and debris into the air. That gigantic figure was none other than the immobilized Starlight Behemoth. Chapter 2457. The Behemoth Falls. How is that possible? Chapter 2457. The Behemoth Falls. How is that possible? The flying ship injured the boss with just one attack. How powerful is that thing? Are flying ships really this strong? Both the Silver Lion Legion and the fleeing Stormheart team fell silent as they stared at the fallen Starlight Behemoth. They had no idea of how to express the shock they felt. Ordinary mythic monsters couldn't compare to a mythic-ranked Realm Lord, even after the Starlight Behemoth had lost its domain. Its defense should be particularly high. Tier 2 players might deal around -5,000 damage to an ordinary mythic, but when they attacked a Realm Lord like the Starlight Behemoth, they'd only deal around -3,000 damage. Exceeding a monster like the Starlight Behemoth's damage tolerance to injure it would be absolutely impossible for current players, yet the Crimson Dragon flying ship had accomplished the feat. When Feng saw the Guardian boss on the ground, however, he wasn't surprised. On the contrary, he had expected this outcome. The magic elven cannon dealt peak Tier 4 divine damage. The cannon's power was nearly at the Tier 5 standard. Although the Starlight Behemoth was a Realm Lord, it was not a higher life form. Its life rating was roughly the same as ordinary mythic monsters, it was merely tougher. Compared to the mutated Sunset King Feng had encountered in the Sea God's realm, the Starlight Behemoth was an infant. If the magic elven cannon could even deal significant damage to the Sunset King, what chance did the Starlight Behemoth possibly have against it? Good. Bombard it with ranged attacks. Feng shouted, gesturing to the heavily injured Realm Lord. Not only would God's Domain's monsters lose a significant amount of their combat power when heavily injured, but their defense would decrease as well. A level 100+ mythic monster had incredible recovery speed, and if they didn't take advantage of this opportunity, they'd have to wait another 5 minutes before they could fire the magic elven cannon again. Roar. Before Feng and his entourage could attack the Guardian boss, however, it released a deafening roar, which was so powerful that it stirred up a storm around the monster. The Starlight Behemoth then stretched open its massive maw, gathering a horrifying amount of mana within. Tier 4 spell, Starlight Roar. A brilliant beam of starlight shot from the Starlight Behemoth's mouth, and as it did, it shattered space around it. The attack was so fast that the Crimson Dragon flying ship didn't have time to dodge. The blood drained from everyone's faces. That beam attack had even more power than the flying ship's mana pulse cannons. It would annihilate any Tier 3 player it struck. Magic Shield, activate. Taking no risks, Feng activated the Crimson Dragon flying ship's magic shield immediately. Boom. When the beam collided with the magic shield, It transformed space around the ship into a sea of fire as another thunderous boom echoed throughout the area. As everyone expected to see the flying ship severely damaged, the flames died down, and the flying ship remained in one piece. However, cracks had formed along the barrier around it. As expected of a realm lord, it devoured over 20 million points from the shield's energy reserved with one attack. Shifeng was astounded when he saw that nearly half of the magic shield's energy was gone. The Crimson Dragon flying ship had upper rank Tier 3 defense, which was even higher than most mythic monsters, yet it had taken over -20 million damage. The Starlight Roar clearly had the power to approach the Tier 4 upper rank. The attack would even shatter a minor NPC city's defensive magic array. After its attack, the Starlight Behemoth flapped its wings and flew toward the Crimson Dragon flying ship. It intended to down the ship before it did anything else. The flying ship was, after all, a long-distance war weapon and, as such, was weak against close combat attacks. Shifeng, however, had no intention of letting the Realm Lord get close to his flying ship. Before the Starlight Behemoth had even ascended, he had driven the ship toward the rear of the Silver Lion Legion. Since the Starlight Behemoth was so injured, the Crimson Dragon flying ship easily outran it. The Starlight Behemoth's speed has decreased. McCaffrey's eyes glowed as he watched the flying ship kite the Guardian boss around the Silver Lion Legion. McCaffrey had been relatively surprised to see the Crimson Dragon flying ship injure the Starlight Behemoth, but injuring a Guardian boss and killing it were two different things. The Starlight Behemoth might look miserable, but it hadn't lost a significant amount of HP. The magic elven cannon had only dealt a little over -50 million damage, which was nothing to the Starlight Behemoth. The Realm Lord would tear the Crimson Dragon flying ship to shreds long before they could kill it. It had an incredible recovery rate, after all. The flying ship, on the other hand, was a war weapon, and as such, it didn't have an automatic recovery ability. Every point of durability it lost in this battle would be permanent until repairs could be made. If the ship could kite the Starlight Behemoth, however, it would be a different story. As long as Shifeng's group kept the Guardian boss distracted, the Legion could spare some of its Tier 3 experts to help attack the Starlight Behemoth once it had finished off enough of the elemental creature army, slowly whittling the Realm Lord to death. But before McCaffrey could finish his thought, the Crimson Dragon flying ship stopped moving. What is he trying to do? Does he still plan to face the Starlight Behemoth head-on? The Silver Lion Legion's members were confused when they saw the ship come to a halt. They couldn't fathom what Shifeng was trying to do. Since the Crimson Dragon flying ship was currently faster than the Starlight Behemoth, it had the opportunity to increase the distance between it and the Guardian boss, buying time until the magic elven cannon's cooldown had ended. However, Shifeng instead chose to let the mythic monster catch up. The swordsman was clearly mad. With how fast the Starlight Behemoth's recovery rate was, its injuries would heal completely in a matter of minutes. While the Starlight Behemoth grew closer, and the Silver Lion Legion grew more nervous, Shifeng revealed the Bible of Darkness and activated demon summoning. A colossal pair of doors suddenly appeared before the flying ship, and as they parted, dense dark energy flooded through, transforming a 100-yard radius into a bubble of darkness. Once the doors were fully open, an 8-meter-tall one-horned demon flew through them. It wore a suit of pitch-black armor and was supported by 2 pairs of leathery, dark black wings. The instant this one-horned demon emerged, every member of the Silver Lion Legion shuddered. A level 125, Tier 4 Great Demon? Why has a Great Demon come here? We're doomed. There are actually 2 Tier 4 monsters. This wasn't the first time they had seen a Tier 4 Great Demon, but the one before them was a level 125 Great Demon. Every 5 levels was a turning point in God's domain, and the difference was especially prominent after level 100. At most, the Silver Lion Legion could deal with level 110 monsters. If they tried to take down a level 125 Great Demon, they'd be digging their own graves. A level 125 Great Demon was even more frightening than the level 113 Starlight Behemoth. As they all began to plan their funerals, Shifeng pointed at the Starlight Behemoth, shouting at the one-horned demon, "Go! Kill it!" "Yes, my lord," the one-homed demon spoke in the human tongue before lightly bowing to Shifeng. Suddenly, the one-horned demon vanished, and by the time everyone noticed it again, It hovered within 200 yards of the Realm Lord. Tier 4 spell, advanced instantaneous movement. Once the great demon was within range, it swung its shadow-black, steel trident. A threefold magic array then appeared above the starlight behemoth's head. Tier 4 spell, dark lightning. Boom. 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 Black arcs of lightning descended from above, striking the heavily injured Realm Lord, and each pulled an agonized cry from the mythic monster. Each lightning strike also dealt over -10 million damage, and after suffering 9 consecutive attacks, the starlight behemoth had lost nearly 100 million HP. Everyone was stupefied. Just how many cards does he possess? Shock and confusion flashed in Crimson Witch's eyes as she watched Shafong control the one-horned demon. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU first, he had revealed the Crimson Dragon flying ship, then, he showed off his ability to summon a level 125 Great Demon. Shafong was practically a one-man army. The Stormheart Adventurer team's members, who watched from a distance, could not help but gape at the scene. This was the first time they had ever seen anyone beat a level 100+ Realm Lord into submission. The level 125 Great Demon continued to tank the Starlight Behemoth, while the Crimson Dragon flying ship bombarded the Realm Lord with attacks, rapidly depleting its HP. Although the Starlight Behemoth tried to use a variety of skills to retaliate, it only dealt a little damage to the one-horned demon. Compared to how quickly the Starlight Behemoth's HP drained, the amount of HP the Great Demon lost was nothing. In less than 10 minutes, before the Silver Lion Legion could even kill one Grand Lord, the Starlight Behemoth, one of the Starlight Fortress's guardian bosses, fell. Chapter 2458, Unexpected Loot. Chapter 2458, Unexpected Loot. When the gigantic Starlight Behemoth crashed into the ground, the Silver Lion Legion members watched their experience bars rapidly fill. Each of them had earned even more EXP than when they normally slew level 100+ mythic monsters as 100-man teams. Some players even leveled up, reaching level 106. It's dead. For a moment, the Silver Lion Legion's members, who were in the middle of their battle with the elemental creature army, were stunned after the Starlight Behemoth had hit the ground. None of them had expected a level 113 domain class mythic ranked Realm Lord to go down so easily. For a moment, they even wondered if the Starlight Behemoth had actually been a level 110 Grand Lord. However, the Silver Lion Legion members were all experts, and they knew that weakness wasn't the reason the fight with the Starlight Behemoth had gone so smoothly. Rather, Shafong's group was just that ridiculously strong. Meanwhile, the Starlight Behemoth began to disintegrate into countless particles of light, and a moment later, streaks of golden light escaped the Realm Lord's fading corpse, scattering around it. Upon landing on the ground, those streaks of light transformed into dazzling items that radiated dense mana. Some even gathered the ambient mana around them. In the blink of an eye, the site of the Starlight Behemoth's fall had transformed into a high mana density area. Crap. Isn't the boss's loot a little too abundant? A mythic-ranked Realm Lord really is amazing. The loot from the level 100+ mythics we've killed in the past doesn't even come close. Its loot has even increased the mana density in the surrounding area. The Silver Lion Legion members' eyes nearly fell from their sockets as they gazed at the Guardian boss's loot. They had seen level 100+ mythic bosses' loot before. They had even seen world bosses' loot, but they had never seen a phenomenon like this. Even though they couldn't appraise the items right now, they had a rough estimation of the loot's value based on the mana the items radiated. The items that pulled mana to themselves, in particular, should be epic rank at the very least. There was no way those items could be dark gold rank. Level 100+ epic items. The Silver Lion Legion had killed multiple level 100+ mythic monsters just to acquire one level 100+ epic item. However, not only had the Starlight Behemoth dropped such items, but it had also dropped over 24 items that radiated dense mana. Based on their experiences, those 24 items were likely dark gold rank. To equip level 110 dark gold items was akin to equipping level 100+ epic items to players like them, who hadn't yet reached level 110. Although level reduction gemstones that they could use with level 100+ weapons and equipment were rare and costly, The cost was negligible compared to equipping level 110 dark gold weapons and equipment now. If a tier 3 player could fully gear themselves in level 110 dark gold equipment while at level 105, they'd even be able to tank level 110 mythic monsters, not to mention level 110 Grand Lords. McCaffrey and Divine Tribe's other upper echelons couldn't help the envy they felt. Divine Tribe hadn't obtained a single piece of level 110 dark gold equipment yet. It didn't even have much level 105 dark gold equipment. And as for level 100 plus epic weapons and equipment, the guild had almost nothing. Unfortunately, Divine Tribe and Zero Wing had agreed that a monster's loot would go to whichever team was responsible for slaying it. If both sides contributed to a monster's death, they would distribute the dropped items based on their contributions in the fight. For a moment, McCaffrey regretted his decision to save the Tier 4 hero summoning scroll. He had never expected the Starlight Behemoth to drop so many precious items. If he had used the scroll, slaying the Starlight Behemoth wouldn't have been a problem. It had already been heavily injured, and if the guild could obtain a fraction of the Starlight Behemoth's loot, it would be worth the cost of using the Tier 4 hero summoning scroll. The Tier 4 hero could have also helped kill the rest of the fortress's mythic bosses, and the Silver Lion Legion would return with enough of a harvest to outstrip the value of a Tier 4 hero summoning scroll. However, Zero Wing would now monopolize the Realm Lord's loot, while Divine Tribe could only watch, envious. Everyone, work harder. You can see how much loot that boss dropped. There are still several more Guardian bosses in the Starlight Fortress. If we can kill them, I'll hold an internal auction for all of the weapons and equipment we earn. Everyone will have a chance to obtain top-tier weapons and equipment, McCaffrey shouted in the team chat. Whether or not you can take advantage of this opportunity depends on your performance now. McCaffrey's announcement ignited the Silver Lion Legion members' fighting spirit. Internal auctions rarely occurred among Divine Tribe's expert teams, especially among the guild's trump card legions and teams. The guild usually only distributed monsters' loot among specific players, and only a small portion was available for the core members, in exchange for GCPs, in the guild warehouse. McCaffrey's decision to hold an internal auction for the loot they obtained on this mission was a huge opportunity for all of them. Without the guild's interference, they wouldn't have to worry about missing their chance to contest for the best available weapons and equipment. Moreover, only a small number of players participated in this operation, which increased their chances of securing top-tier weapons and equipment. Even if the guild upper echelons on the team participated, they only had a little more GCPs than the rest of the Legion. With so many items up for grabs, these upper echelons would only win a small fraction of the loot. With their fighting spirit reaching unprecedented highs, the Silver Lion Legion stopped holding back as they desperately fought the monster army charging at them. McCaffrey even used the Tier 4 hero summoning scroll to help clear out the mobs. Seeing this astonished Shifeng a little. He had never considered that the Starlight Behemoth's loot would motivate the Legion to such an extent. He didn't give the matter much thought, however. The harder the Silver Lion Legion worked, the faster they could clear out the fortress's mobs. If Zero Wing's 10 members had to take on the task alone, it would take ages to clear out the entire fortress. Aqua, I'm giving you command while I tidy up the loot, Shifeng said before he leaped off the Crimson Dragon flying ship. Although he doubted that the Silver Lion Legion's members would try to steal his loot, the Starlight Behemoth had dropped extraordinary items. The sooner he secured those items, the better. Not only was the Starlight Behemoth a domain-class mythic ranked realm lord, but such mythic bosses were also quite rare in God's domain. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. After Shifeng disembarked the ship, Aqua Rose and her comrades continued to bombard the Starlight Fortress's west wall. Shifeng wore an astonished expression by the time he had finished collecting the Starlight Behemoth's loot and appraised the first item. The Starlight Fortress Lord's token? Confused, Shifeng stared at the dark gold token in his palm. Before he could figure out what was going on, he heard the sound of a system notification. Star Valley Region System announcement. A player has successfully captured the Starlight Fortress. The guild this player belongs to will receive 20,000 guild reputation points. This player has become the Starlight Fortress's lord. The Starlight Fortress will automatically open to the public in 3 days. Players may enter and rest within the fortress freely at that time. Chapter 2459, Western Continent Shaken. Chapter 2459, Western Continent Shaken. The system announcement repeated throughout the Star Valley 3 times, and everyone in battle fell silent for a moment at the main god system's cold, mechanical voice. What's going on? Someone captured the Starlight Fortress? The Silver Lion Legion members couldn't keep up with the sudden developments. They hadn't even made it through the walls or gate yet, so no one should have been able to capture the fortress. How could this have happened? It wasn't just the Legion's various experts who were confused, even McCaffrey, the Legion's vice commander, was stunned. What happened to the Starlight Fortress? McCaffrey gazed at the fortress several thousand yards away, confounded. Did someone sneak in and slay the final Guardian boss? Even as McCaffrey wondered this, he tried to deny the possibility. In God's domain, players couldn't enter a sealed fortress until they destroyed the front gate or broke a hole in the walls. Since the Starlight Fortress's walls and gate were intact, how could any player get into the fortress? Even if players could accomplish the task, the fortress was still home to hundreds of thousands of elemental creatures. All of these monsters were level 110 or higher, and the weakest of them was Lord rank. Not even a 1,000-man, Tier 3 team would be able to handle the final Guardian boss in such a situation, much less a 100-man team of Tier 3 players. Even if players miraculously managed to reach and challenge the final Guardian boss, fighting the mythic ranked boss should cause a huge commotion, but although they had been engaged in battle outside the fortress, they hadn't heard any noise from within. The only strange part about this siege was that over 50,000 monsters had emerged to attack, rather than the 10,000 they had expected. Moreover, this monster army had over 100 Grand Lords and a mythic boss, a creature that normally should remain within the fortress. Could it be? McCaffrey suddenly thought of a possibility, and he spun toward Shafong, who was busy looting the Starlight Behemoth's loot near the rear line. In all of his experience sieging God's domain's fortresses, the final Guardian boss had never charged out of the fortress, yet the Starlight Behemoth had been extraordinarily powerful. As a mythic-ranked realm lord, the Starlight Behemoth could be considered on par with a world boss, albeit one of the weakest. Of course, a level 113 world boss was an absolute nightmare for current players. Not to mention, the Starlight Behemoth had the support of an army of 50,000 monsters. Defeating it was far more difficult than defeating an ordinary realm lord. If Shafong hadn't used Miniature World to suppress the Guardian boss's domain earlier, McCaffrey would have prepared to lose half of his legion at least. Meanwhile, Shafong stood in the middle of the crater, holding a dark gold token. The token radiated dense mana and served as proof of their success in capturing the Starlight Fortress. The Starlight Fortress Lord's token. McCaffrey wasn't the only one to notice. Crimson Witch and the others had turned to look at Shafong as well. They've captured the fortress, just like that. Crimson Witch stared at the token in Shafong's hand with wide eyes. Although she knew that Shafong's group had a high chance of capturing the Starlight Fortress, she had never thought he'd secure the Fortress Lord's token so soon. This was one of Star Valley's fortresses they were talking about. It was something the Western continent's various superpowers dreamed of obtaining, and yet, Shafong had captured the fortress so easily. If she told this story, not even fools would believe her. Every member of the Silver Lion Legion was stupefied. None of them had ever expected a fortress in a level 100+ forbidden land to be so easy to capture. If the continent's other superpowers found out about this, they'd likely faint with anger. In reality, even Shafong was astonished. He hadn't expected to obtain the Starlight Fortress Lord's token so quickly either. He had even been prepared to use the Hero's Tome to summon a Tier 4 hero. If the first Guardian boss they had faced had already been a mythic-ranked realm lord, the final Guardian boss might be a superior mythic. Players like them wouldn't be able to deal with a level 110+ superior mythic easily. Only a Tier 4 hero would have a chance of defeating such a monster. This has saved us a lot of effort, but we have much less time to fortify the fortress now. Shafong was not particularly pleased to see the Fortress Lord's token, and he gave it a bitter smile. The fact that he had obtained the Fortress Lord's token so soon was both a blessing and a curse. Now that he had secured the Fortress Lord's token, he would have full control of the Starlight Fortress's magic array. Although he still had to reach the fortress's core to activate the defensive magic array, it would no longer buff the monsters within now that he had the token. This would make capturing the fortress far easier. Now, he only needed to clear out the monsters in the Starlight Fortress, and he wouldn't have to destroy the fortress's wall or gate to do it. He could simply waltz through the front gate. The only problem was that he needed to clear out the monsters and strengthen the fortress's defenses within 3 days, before the fortress opened to the public, and players began to flood in. Without adequate defenses, managing the fortress would become troublesome, and the various superpowers might use the opportunity to take it from him. Unfortunately, sealing the fortress and preventing players from entering wasn't possible. The Starlight Fortress was in Star Valley, a forbidden land. God's domain's forbidden lands weren't controlled by any kingdom or empire, and almost all of their fortresses had survived since ancient times, created before the Great Destruction. Forbidden lands' fortresses weren't like those in neutral maps or guild towns and cities. Even with the Fortress Lord's token, one would not gain full access to the fortress. They couldn't open or seal the fortresses as they wished. This was also the reason that any power to capture a fortress in a forbidden land was forced to send a large number of members to garrison the fortress. In truth, the main god system's settings for this weren't unreasonable. Forbidden lands had far more abundant resources than other maps. If a power could acquire full control of an ancient fortress in a forbidden land, it would be nigh impossible for other powers to break through the defenses and take it from them due to the defensive mechanisms that had also survived since ancient times. The power that had first captured the fortress would have permanent access to the forbidden land's resources, while everyone else would have to watch from the sidelines. This certainly wasn't a fair situation. Take the Starlight Fortress, for example. It might only be a small fortress, but once its defensive magic array was activated, only Tier 5 beings would be able to break it. In an era where the gods had gone into seclusion, Tier 5 powerhouses stood at the peak of God's domain. Even emperors had to show proper respect. These powerhouses could wipe out entire kingdoms. Not even empires would get away scot-free after provoking such an individual. Shifeng had thought that he'd have 3 full days to bolster the Starlight Fortress's defenses after he captured it, but now he had to waste some of that time clearing out the hundreds of thousands of monsters within. While Shifeng and the others continued their fight against the Starlight Fortress's monsters, the Stormheart adventurer team watched from a distance with dropped jaws. "Who are those people?" the ruthless, great sword-wielding man muttered as he stared at the system announcement in shock. "They've actually managed to capture the Starlight Fortress. We don't know who they are, but this will certainly cause an uproar across the continent," Crow, Stormheart's commander, said. He couldn't help but glance Shifeng's way. The various powers and expert teams all wanted to conquer Star Valley, but players couldn't remain in the area for very long, which slowed their exploration progress in the Forbidden Land. Although the various superpowers had frequently tried to capture fortresses within Star Valley, none had succeeded. Now that someone had, Crow didn't even want to imagine how this event would change Star Valley. While Stormheart's members discussed the matter amongst themselves, news of the Starlight Fortress's capture spread like wildfire throughout the western continent. 2460 Swarming Starlight Fortress Chapter 2460 Swarming Starlight Fortress Silver Moon Empire, Silver Lion City. What did you say? Zero Wing has already captured the Starlight Fortress? Adolphe was momentarily stunned when he heard McCaffrey's report. Impossible. Your group only left a while ago. Even if you hadn't rested, how could you have slain several 100,000 monsters in the fortress so quickly? Adolphe felt as if McCaffrey were playing a joke on him. Zero Wing and the Silver Lion Legion hadn't even been gone from Silver Lion City for more than a day, and the Starlight Fortress was home to hundreds of thousands of monsters, the weakest of which was Lord rank. Furthermore, there were plenty of Great Lords and Grand Lords in the fortress, and multiple mythic-ranked Guardian bosses. Even if the Starlight Fortress had opened its gate to the Silver Lion Legion, the Legion's 8,000 players would still need a lot of time to clear out all of the monsters. It'd be a miracle if the Legion finished the job within 2 or 3 days. However, less than a day had passed since the Legion had left for Star Valley, and including travel time, they had spent even less time in the area. Did McCaffrey assume he had gone senile with old age? It's true, Great Elder, McCaffrey insisted, smiling bitterly when he saw Adolph's skepticism. Take a look for yourself if you don't believe me. We've already entered the Starlight Fortress and are clearing out the monsters. The fortress magic array is now buffing us, rather than its previous residents. As McCaffrey spoke, he changed the video chat to display his view of the situation. Adolph's display then revealed the Silver Lion Legion's fight with the elemental creatures within the Starlight Fortress. Although the weakest of the elemental creatures were level 110 lords, and many of them were level 110 plus Great Lords and Grand Lords, the fortress's magic array suppressed every one of the monsters, drastically reducing their basic attributes and mobility. In addition, the Legion's members were surrounded by a faint purple glow, significantly enhancing their attributes and physiques. Although the Silver Lion Legion was badly outnumbered, the elemental creatures were no match for them, and the monsters continued to fall as the fight continued. Seeing this made it obvious that the Starlight Fortress was now under player control. Otherwise, the fortress's magic array wouldn't behave in such a way. How is this possible? Adolph stared with wide eyes. They were talking about one of Star Valley's fortresses. Even if several superpowers worked together, they still couldn't capture a fortress in this level 100 plus forbidden land, much less Divine Tribe alone. Great Elder, I doubt it will be long before the other superpowers hear of this. The main god system had announced the Starlight Fortress's capture in a regional announcement. We couldn't keep this a secret if we wanted to, McCaffrey cautioned. He could sympathize with how Adolph felt at the moment. When Shifeng had first declared that he wanted to capture the Starlight Fortress, McCaffrey had assumed the swordsman was both insane and ignorant. The West's various superpowers had to expend a lot of resources and manpower to obtain a single town, yet Shifeng wanted to capture a fortress in a level 100 plus forbidden land. Clearly, he hadn't been taking the Western continent's superpowers seriously. Star Valley had leveling resources that were unique to the area. It was also home to the West's only 2 known God Mode regional dungeons. It was no exaggeration to claim that owning one of Star Valley's fortresses was on par with owning several Grade 1 veins. If the various superpowers were capable of capturing these fortresses, they would have already done so. How could a pseudo-superpower like Zero Wing possibly succeed where the various superpowers had failed? In the end, however, Shifeng had succeeded. Moreover, the strength Zero Wing had displayed was far beyond anything McCaffrey could have imagined. When it came to laying siege to fortified locations, Zero Wing outstripped ordinary superpowers. In fact, not even super guilds would prove as adept as Zero Wing in this respect. The domain tools and the Crimson Dragon flying ship Shifeng had revealed were godly tools during an offensive siege. Watching those tools in action had changed everything McCaffrey had thought he knew about siege battles. Before the Ring of Gospel and flying ship, Tier 3 experts were nothing. It seems I still underestimated Zero Wing. Not only can it travel between the continents, but it has even proven capable of capturing the Starlight Fortress. Not even super guilds have such firm foundations, Adolph said, taking a deep breath to calm himself. He also re-evaluated what he knew about the guild known as Zero Wing. Since that is the case, I want you to give everything you have in assisting Zero Wing from now on. Also, inform Black Flame that Divine Tribe is willing to go all out in helping his guild manage the Starlight Fortress. Not only will we send the Divine Him Legion and a 150,000-man expert army to garrison the fortress free of charge, but we'll also give Zero Wing 100 bottles of the special enchanted bloodline. In return, all Divine Tribe wants is a temporary residence in the Starlight Fortress. Adolph's declaration stunned McCaffrey. Do we really need to go that far, Great Elder? Setting aside the Divine Him Legion, we went to great lengths to save up 100 bottles of the special enchanted bloodline. If we give them all to Zero Wing, our guild's Tier 2 experts will have a much harder time reaching Tier 3 than other superpowers players. McCaffrey quickly tried to dissuade Adolph from his decision. The Divine Him Legion wasn't as strong as the Silver Lion Legion, but it was the guild's second strongest trump card legion. Normally, it was responsible for garrisoning the guild's important mining towns. If they transferred the Divine Him Legion to the Starlight Fortress, those mining towns' defenses would become a problem. The 100 special enchanted bloodlines were also supposed to be the capital divine tribe used to compete with the various super guilds. These bloodlines could help the guild quickly nurture Tier 3 experts. With another 100 Tier 3 experts, Divine Tribe could start raiding level 100 super large-scale team dungeons, instantly surpassing the various super guilds. Although Zero Wing had secured the Starlight Fortress, fortresses in Forbidden Lands weren't like those in other maps. Even after capturing them, players couldn't gain full control of these fortresses. Moreover, NPCs wouldn't be around to help manage the fortresses, and thus, they would require a large number of experts to protect them long-term. Otherwise, it wouldn't be long before the ruling power started having problems. Since news of the Starlight Fortress's capture had already begun to spread, many powers would swarm to it in the near future. Meanwhile, Zero Wing had barely any manpower on the Western continent. Without Divine Tribe's help, defending the Starlight Fortress was impossible for Zero Wing. There was simply no reason for Divine Tribe to give Zero Wing 100 bottles of the special enchanted bloodline. We have to. You should realize that if we want a temporary residence in Star Valley, Zero Wing is our only option for an ally. On the other hand, Zero Wing can choose from many superpowers to ally with. However, small fortresses can only have one temporary residence, and we have to have it, no matter what. Adolf sternly informed his subordinate. The potential wealth and resources related to the Starlight Fortress couldn't be underestimated, especially the leveling resources. If Divine Tribe could secure a temporary residence in the Starlight Fortress, the guild's overall leveling speed would surpass the other superpowers by a large margin. 100 special enchanted bloodlines? Zero Wing really has lucked out. When Crimson Witch overheard Adolf's statement and tone, she knew the Great Elder had already made up his mind. She wasn't happy about it, but there was nothing she could do to change it. A lot of superpowers will be paying attention to the fortress, and it still isn't guaranteed that Zero Wing can defend its ownership. Hopefully, Zero Wing doesn't act foolishly. While Divine Tribe discussed the matter, the West's various superpowers began to grow restless. Interesting. It seems someone has proven capable of capturing the Starlight Fortress. Which power is it? Could it be a hidden superpower that has finally decided to spread its wings? Regardless, let's go take a look at the fortress. If this unknown power can't manage the fortress, this is the perfect opportunity to take it from them. The Western continent's various powers began to dispatch large expert teams, sending them to Star Valley. These teams only had one goal: take the Starlight Fortress. Chapter 2460, Swarming Starlight Fortress, Silvermoon Empire, Silver Lion City. Chapter 2460, Swarming Starlight Fortress, Silvermoon Empire, Silver Lion City. What did you say? Zero Wing has already captured the Starlight Fortress? Adolf was momentarily stunned when he heard McCaffrey's report. Impossible. Your group only left a while ago. Even if you hadn't rested, how could you have slain several 100,000 monsters in the fortress so quickly? Adolf felt as if McCaffrey were playing a joke on him. Zero Wing and the Silver Lion Legion hadn't even been gone from Silver Lion City for more than a day, and the Starlight Fortress was home to hundreds of thousands of monsters, the weakest of which was Lord rank. Furthermore, there were plenty of Great Lords and Grand Lords in the fortress, and multiple mythic-ranked Guardian bosses. Even if the Starlight Fortress had opened its gate to the Silver Lion Legion, the Legion's 8,000 players would still need a lot of time to clear out all of the monsters. It'd be a miracle if the Legion finished the job within 2 or 3 days. However, less than a day had passed since the Legion had left for Star Valley, and including travel time, they had spent even less time in the area. Did McCaffrey assume he had gone senile with old age? It's true, Great Elder, McCaffrey insisted, smiling bitterly when he saw Adolf's skepticism. Take a look for yourself if you don't believe me. We've already entered the Starlight Fortress and are clearing out the monsters. The fortress magic array is now buffing us, rather than its previous residents. As McCaffrey spoke, he changed the video chat to display his view of the situation. Adolf's display then revealed the Silver Lion Legion's fight with the elemental creatures within the Starlight Fortress. Although the weakest of the elemental creatures were level 110 lords, and many of them were level 110 plus Great Lords and Grand Lords. The fortress's magic array suppressed every one of the monsters, drastically reducing their basic attributes and mobility. In addition, the Legion's members were surrounded by a faint purple glow, significantly enhancing their attributes and physiques. Although the Silver Lion Legion was badly outnumbered, the elemental creatures were no match for them, and the monsters continued to fall as the fight continued. Seeing this made it obvious that the Starlight Fortress was now under player control. Otherwise, the fortress's magic array wouldn't behave in such a way. How is this possible? Adolf stared with wide eyes. They were talking about one of Star Valley's fortresses. Even if several superpowers worked together, they still couldn't capture a fortress in this level 100 plus Forbidden Land, much less Divine Tribe alone. Great Elder, I doubt it will be long before the other superpowers hear of this. The main god system had announced the Starlight Fortress's capture in a regional announcement. We couldn't keep this a secret if we wanted to, McCaffrey cautioned. He could sympathize with how Adolf felt at the moment. When Shifeng had first declared that he wanted to capture the Starlight Fortress, McCaffrey had assumed the swordsman was both insane and ignorant. The West's various superpowers had to expend a lot of resources and manpower to obtain a single town, yet Shifeng wanted to capture a fortress in a level 100 plus Forbidden Land. Clearly, he hadn't been taking the Western continent's superpowers seriously. Star Valley had leveling resources that were unique to the area. It was also home to the West's only 2 known God Mode regional dungeons. It was no exaggeration to claim that owning one of Star Valley's fortresses was on par with owning several Grade 1 veins. If the various superpowers were capable of capturing these fortresses, they would have already done so. How could a pseudo-superpower like Zero Wing possibly succeed where the various superpowers had failed? In the end, however, Shifeng had succeeded. Moreover, the strength Zero Wing had displayed was far beyond anything McCaffrey could have imagined. When it came to laying siege to fortified locations, Zero Wing outstripped ordinary superpowers. In fact, not even super guilds would prove as adept as Zero Wing in this respect. The domain tools and the Crimson Dragon flying ship Shifeng had revealed were godly tools during an offensive siege. Watching those tools in action had changed everything McCaffrey had thought he knew about siege battles. Before the Ring of Gospel and flying ship, Tier 3 experts were nothing. It seems I still underestimated Zero Wing. Not only can it travel between the continents, but it has even proven capable of capturing the Starlight Fortress. Not even super guilds have such firm foundations, Adolf said, taking a deep breath to calm himself. He also re-evaluated what he knew about the guild known as Zero Wing. Since that is the case, I want you to give everything you have in assisting Zero Wing from now on. Also, inform Black Flame that Divine Tribe is willing to go all out in helping his guild manage the Starlight Fortress. Not only will we send the Divine Him Legion and a 150,000-man expert army to garrison the fortress free of charge, but we'll also give Zero Wing 100 bottles of the special enchanted bloodline. In return, all Divine Tribe wants is a temporary residence in the Starlight Fortress. Adolf's declaration stunned McCaffrey. Do we really need to go that far, Great Elder? Setting aside the Divine Him Legion, we went to great lengths to save up 100 bottles of the special enchanted bloodline. If we give them all to Zero Wing, our guild's Tier 2 experts will have a much harder time reaching Tier 3 than other superpowers players. McCaffrey quickly tried to dissuade Adolf from his decision. The Divine Him Legion wasn't as strong as the Silver Lion Legion, but it was the guild's second strongest trump card legion. Normally, it was responsible for garrisoning the guild's important mining towns. If they transferred the Divine Him Legion to the Starlight Fortress, those mining towns' defenses would become a problem. The 100 special enchanted bloodlines were also supposed to be the capital Divine Tribe used to compete with the various super guilds. These bloodlines could help the guild quickly nurture Tier 3 experts. With another 100 Tier 3 experts, Divine Tribe could start raiding level 100 super large-scale team dungeons, instantly surpassing the various super guilds. Although Zero Wing had secured the Starlight Fortress, fortresses in Forbidden Lands weren't like those in other maps. Even after capturing them, players couldn't gain full control of these fortresses. Moreover, NPCs wouldn't be around to help manage the fortresses, and thus, they would require a large number of experts to protect them long term. Otherwise, it wouldn't be long before the ruling power started having problems. Since news of the Starlight Fortress's capture had already begun to spread, many powers would swarm to it in the near future. Meanwhile, Zero Wing had barely any manpower on the Western continent. Without Divine Tribe's help, defending the Starlight Fortress was impossible for Zero Wing. There was simply no reason for Divine Tribe to give Zero Wing 100 bottles of the special enchanted bloodline. We have to. You should realize that if we want a temporary residence in Star Valley, Zero Wing is our only option for an ally. On the other hand, Zero Wing can choose from many superpowers to ally with. However, small fortresses can only have one temporary residence, and we have to have it, no matter what. Adolf sternly informed his subordinate. The potential wealth and resources related to the Starlight Fortress couldn't be underestimated, especially the leveling resources. If Divine Tribe could secure a temporary residence in the Starlight Fortress, the guild's overall leveling speed would surpass the other superpowers by a large margin. 100 special enchanted bloodlines? Zero Wing really has lucked out. When Crimson Witch overheard Adolf's statement and tone, she knew the Great Elder had already made up his mind. She wasn't happy about it, but there was nothing she could do to change it. A lot of superpowers will be paying attention to the fortress, and it still isn't guaranteed that Zero Wing can defend its ownership. Hopefully, Zero Wing doesn't act foolishly. While Divine Tribe discussed the matter, the West's various superpowers began to grow restless. Interesting. It seems someone has proven capable of capturing the Starlight Fortress. Which power is it? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Could it be a hidden superpower that has finally decided to spread its wings? Regardless, let's go take a look at the fortress. If this unknown power can't manage the fortress, this is the perfect opportunity to take it from them. The Western continent's various powers began to dispatch large expert teams, sending them to Star Valley. These teams only had one goal: take the Starlight Fortress. Chapter 2461, Fortresses Legacy. Star Valley, Starlight Fortress. Chapter 2461, Fortresses Legacy. Star Valley, Starlight Fortress. Inside the dilapidated fortress full of level 110+ elemental creatures, the Silver Lion Legion continued to push toward the fortress's core. Although they faced more Great Lords and Grand Lords as they delved further into the fortress, defeating these monsters became an easy task with the Tier 4 hero McCaffrey had summoned and the fortress's magic array buff. After grinding in the fortress for just 6 hours, every member of the Legion discovered that their experience bars had grown considerably. Their leveling speed here was several times faster than grinding in normal maps. Furthermore, the elemental creatures dropped substantial loot, including plenty of level 110 mysterious iron equipment. If they were lucky, even level 110 secret silver equipment and set equipment would drop. The equipment was top tier to the Silver Lion Legion's members. The highest leveled players among them were level 106, while many of them were still stuck at level 105. Currently, obtaining level 110 weapons and equipment was a major challenge for them. Set equipment pieces' attributes were generally half a rank better than ordinary equipment of the same rank. If players could collect the full set, the set's attributes would be a full rank better than ordinary equipment of the same rank, with some having even greater bonuses. Take the level 110 secret silver set equipment the Starlight Fortress's monsters dropped, for example. Although the hidden blue set was only a level 110 secret silver set equipment, not only would having 6 of the 8 pieces increase a player's casting speed by 20%, but it would also increase their spells' effects by 25%. With all 8 pieces of the set, it would increase one spell completion rate by another 2% and casting range by 20%. Wearing this set, a magical class expert's DPS would be even higher than players in level 110 fine gold equipment. Even after they reached level 110, they couldn't be certain how many pieces of level 110 fine gold equipment they could obtain. It was likely that only the guild's peak experts had any chance of securing a full set. Obtaining enough level 110 fine gold equipment was simply too difficult for experts of their caliber. Fortunately, McCaffrey had already announced that he would auction all weapons and equipment they obtained from the Starlight Fortress. This meant that they'd all get a chance to acquire level 110 secret silver set equipment. How much they obtained would only depend on how many GCPs they had saved up. This was the reason that the Silver Lion Legion members put all of their effort into clearing out the Starlight Fortress's monsters, even without Shifeng saying a word. They actually hoped that Shifeng's group wouldn't participate in the battle, allowing them to keep all of the elemental creatures for themselves. The fortress only had so many monsters, and there wouldn't be enough secret silver set equipment for everyone. Guild leader, are we really going to leave these elemental creatures to divine tribes members? Aqua Rose asked as she watched the Silver Lion Legion push through the fortress's main streets. Level 110 secret silver equipment and set equipment might not be important to her or the other experts that had ventured to the western continent with Shifeng, but it would be to Zero Wing's other experts. Moreover, not even level 110 common equipment had shown up on the market yet, much less level 110 secret silver equipment. They had an advantage with the Crimson Dragon flying ship, and the fortress's magic array currently suppressed the monster's basic attributes. This was an excellent opportunity to secure some level 110 weapons and equipment for the guild. Leaving all of the suppressed monsters for the Silver Lion Legion was a huge waste. That won't be necessary. Although these monsters drop a lot of loot, only the Grand Lords drop secret silver equipment, and they only have a chance of doing so. The drop rate isn't 100%. Since the Silver Lion Legion is willing to help us clear out the fortress, we should allow them to benefit from the task, Shifeng said, chuckling when he watched the idea of level 110 secret silver equipment tempt Aqua Rose. If we try to clear the fortress ourselves, it'll take us a long time. Besides, we have something more important to take care of. As per Shifeng's agreement with Adolf, the Silver Lion Legion was only here to help Zero Wing capture a city. Now that they had captured the Starlight Fortress, the Legion had no reason to continue the fight. It was well within its rights to turn around and leave. The fact that the Silver Lion Legion was willing to slay the monsters within the fortress was good news for Shifeng. If Zero Wing had to clear out the monsters on its own, he wouldn't have much time left to fortify the fortress. Something more important. After giving the matter some thought, Aqua Rose asked, "Are we raiding the remaining Guardian bosses?" The moment Aqua Rose mentioned the Guardian bosses, Cola and the other Zero Wing experts burst with excitement. They hadn't had a chance to participate in the fight with the Starlight Behemoth directly, so they were itching for action. "No," Shifeng replied, shaking his head. "We'll be taking control of the Fortress Lord's mansion." "The Fortress Lord's mansion? Guild leader, don't you already have the Fortress Lord's token?" Aqua Rose inquired. The Fortress Lord's token was necessary to take control of the fortress as a whole, and it was the key component in taking over the Fortress Lord's mansion. Normally, when one obtained a Fortress Lord's token, they automatically gained control of the Fortress Lord's mansion. However, Shifeng now informed them that they still needed to secure the mansion. "I do have the Fortress Lord's token, but I don't control the Fortress Lord's mansion yet. In fact, I don't even have partial control over it," Shifeng explained with a bitter smile. Fortresses built before the Great Destruction weren't like more modern fortresses. When one gained the Fortress Lord's token for the latter, they would gain full control of the Fortress Lord's mansion, but that wasn't the case with ancient fortresses. Securing an ancient Fortress Lord's mansion would prove several times more difficult than capturing the fortress itself. The true value of these fortresses didn't lie in the resident monsters' loot nor the items that the Guardian bosses dropped. Rather, the truly valuable items were the ancient legacies, that were stored in the Fortress Lord's mansion. Items such as weapons and equipment were only secondary compared to these ancient legacies. Most of the legacies ancient humans had left behind to reach Tier 3 had been lost to time, and as a result, present-day humans had a far more difficult time completing their Tier 3 and higher promotion quests. Since ancient fortresses like the Starlight Fortress had existed before the Great Destruction, they, more or less, still contained Tier 3 and higher legacies. These legacies were the true treasures within ancient fortresses. At this stage of the game, players only knew that it was difficult to reach Tier 3. They weren't aware that Tier 3 was only the beginning of their journey in God's domain. Once they completed their Tier 3 promotions, growing stronger would become many times more difficult. Why was this the case? The reason was very simple. After reaching Tier 3, players wouldn't receive any guidance from the system regarding ways to increase their strength. Take Tier 3 skills and spells, for example. These were the foundation for Tier 3 players' power. If players only relied on legacy skill points to acquire Tier 3 skills and spells, they wouldn't be considered a true Tier 3 player. To be a true Tier 3 player, one would need at least 10 Tier 3 skills or spells in their arsenal. One also needed a way to control their mana body, which was also a crucial legacy. These methods were even more important than Tier 3 skills and spells. Although Shifeng was already a master magician, and his control and understanding of magic arrays were far superior to other players, he only had basic control of his mana body. This was also the case for the Western continent's experts, who were particularly skilled at controlling mana. Their mastery with their mana bodies was still in the infantile stages. This was why current Tier 3 experts were no match for Tier 3 NPCs. Many of the legacies within ancient fortresses were related to mana body control, offering methods that allowed humans, who had no physical advantages, to survive in the dangerous environments that had survived the Great Destruction. Guild leader, how are we supposed to secure the Fortress Lord's mansion? Aqua Rose asked. She realized that Shifeng wasn't joking when she saw his serious expression. If they could not secure the Fortress Lord's mansion, the Starlight Fortress would remain ownerless. If that didn't change before the fortress automatically opened to the public, Zero Wing would be left in a very awkward position. It's simple. All we need to do is pass the legacy trial in the Fortress Lord's mansion. If we fail, we'll only control the fortress on the surface, even with the Fortress Lord's token, Shifeng replied. To put it simply, the Starlight Fortress Lord's token was a ticket to obtain the Starlight Fortress's legacy. How much of the fortress players controlled would depend on how much of its legacy they could activate. The various ancient fortresses' legacy trials differed in difficulty. The known difficulties were normal, hard, hell, Azura, and God mode. The more challenging a legacy trial was, the greater its rewards would be, but clearing the trial would also require more players. Moreover, all legacy trials had a 1-week cooldown. Shifeng then led Aqua Rose and the rest of his companions toward the Starlight Fortress's Fortress Lord's mansion. A magic array currently enveloped the mansion, and not even mythic monsters could break through the barrier, let alone players. Only the player that held the Fortress Lord's token and those that player granted access to could pass through the barrier. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. After walking up to the mansion's entrance, Shifeng retrieved the Fortress Lord's token and started to chant an incantation. Silently, he prayed, "Please, don't let the Starlight Fortress's legacy trial be too high of a difficulty." He hadn't just chosen to capture the Starlight Fortress because its monsters were easier to deal with. Most of his reasoning was based on the fact that it was one of the few small fortresses in Star Valley that had a Fortress Lord's mansion with a weak mana signature. This meant that the legacy the Starlight Fortress protected wasn't particularly powerful, and the legacy trial shouldn't be overly difficult. If he had tried to capture a fortress with a powerful Fortress Lord's mansion, he would have wasted his effort if he couldn't secure control of the mansion after capturing the fortress. When Shifeng finished the incantation recorded on the token, a dark purple, fourfold magic array appeared on the mansion's main door. A set of gigantic, golden doors then emerged, and as the doors slowly parted, an ancient aura gushed between them. Crap! Isn't this just a measly small fortress? Why does it have an Azura mode legacy trial? Shifeng was utterly dumbfounded when he saw the golden doors. Chapter 2462, Gold Gate. Chapter 2462, Gold Gate. Aqua Rose and the others couldn't help their surprise when the set of golden doors appeared before the entrance to the Fortress Lord's mansion. Although the doors were only 8 meters tall, they radiated a sacred aura that tamed the nearby ambient mana. This aura even affected the mana within Zero Wing's members. Although the divine runes and images had been engraved on the doors, these runes and images were indiscernible when players tried to examine them. Even so, the blurred runes and images felt somehow heavy and inspired curiosity. What are the markings on the doors? I tried to examine them for a moment, but it made me feel even more exhausted than using advanced combat techniques multiple times in a row. Aqua Rose wondered aloud. After examining the engravings, she pried her gaze away from the doors. She had seen plenty of amazing items in God's domain, but this was the first time she had encountered something that could deplete her concentration so drastically after looking at it for a few seconds. She didn't doubt that if she had stared at the doors for a few more moments, her mind would have been overloaded. Fire Dance and the others also turned away from the doors, afraid they'd pass out if they continued to stare. God's Domain's players rarely fainted from concentration depletion, but if it happened, the results would be even more severe than from stamina depletion. When a player's stamina depleted, they'd lose the ability to move, but when they lost all of their concentration, they'd be forced into a deep slumber, which took an incredibly long time to recover from. This could be a fatal setback for players fighting on the front lines. This is normal. The information on this gold gate is a legacy that has been passed down from ancient times. Moreover, this is a relatively complete legacy and far more complex than the combat techniques we've seen thus far. It isn't something players can simply glance at, Shifeng said. When he saw his teammates' curiosity, he revealed a bitter smile and continued, "If you look at this legacy for too long, your recovery could take more than 5 days." The legacy gates left behind in ancient fortresses fell into 3 ranks: Bronze Gate, Silver Gate, and Gold Gate. Each gate was stronger than the last, and the legacies they contained were more complete with each subsequent rank. Similarly, the higher the gate's rank was, the more difficult the legacy trial would be. Many Tier 3 experts would already struggle to clear the normal and hard mode legacy trials on the Bronze Gates. The Gold Gates only contained Azura and God Mode legacy trials, which were so difficult that even peak experts would despair at the challenge. Shifeng had assumed that, even in the worst-case scenario, the Starlight Fortress would house a Silver Gate. He had never considered that the Legacy Gate would be Gold rank. Taking control of this Fortress Lord's mansion would be nearly as difficult as capturing a large fortress's Fortress Lord's mansion. Has the system elevated the trial's difficulty because we're the first to capture an ancient fortress? Questions filled Shifeng's mind as he gazed at the Gold Gate before him. Normally, small fortresses had, at most, silver gates, and medium fortresses would only have a small chance of containing a Gold Gate. He had never heard of anyone finding a Gold Gate in a small fortress. Forget it. Let's just take this one step at a time. Shifeng shook his head, banishing his worries. He then gritted his teeth and led his team through the Gold Gate. If he refused to participate in the trial now that he had activated it with the Fortress Lord's token, he would have to wait for the token's cooldown to end before he could try again. Moreover, the appearance of a Gold Gate wasn't all bad. This could be a blessing for them. A high-ranked Legacy Gate might be very difficult to clear, but it would also provide greater help as players learned how to control their mana bodies. A Legacy Gate was an ancient fortress's most valuable treasure. It was also the greatest benefit to controlling an ancient fortress. The various powers hadn't initially been aware of this fact in Shifeng's previous life and had treated the Legacy Gates as a way to gain more control over their fortresses. The various powers had only discovered the Legacy Gate's true value after some time, learning that these gates were the fastest way for players to unlock the full potential of their mana bodies. If players tried to explore and adapt to their mana bodies without such help, unlocking their mana body's potential would take ages. As Shifeng and the others walked through the Gold Gate, the world around them warped. The world settled into place again, and Shifeng found himself before a sacred, golden mountain, alone. This golden mountain was several thousand meters tall. Shifeng couldn't even see where the mountain ended. The mountain's aura was just slightly less intense than that of the Tower of Four Gods. While bathed in the mountain's aura, Shifeng felt an intense pressure bear down on him, reducing his mobility. So, this is a Gold Gate's trial. Shifeng looked around him, shocked. During his previous life, he had only ever entered a Bronze Gate, and he had only acquired the entry slot after paying a huge sum. Even so, he had paid the price gladly. If he hadn't, he would have had to rely on his own experiences to explore and adapt to his mana body, like independent players, wasting a lot of precious time in the process. The stronger one's mana body was, the more difficult it was to unlock its potential. Because of this, independent Tier 3 players struggled to surpass the various superpowers Tier 3 experts. Unfortunately, it couldn't be helped. It was simply a benefit of having access to a guild's resources. If that weren't the case, so many players wouldn't be so desperate to join the various superpowers. Within the Gold Gate, Shifeng discovered that the difference between a Bronze and Gold Gate was far greater than he had expected. When he had entered the Bronze Gate, its environment hadn't affected his mental state, but within the Gold Gate, he could feel a void in his mind. Within spaces that had thin traces of mana, such a mental state would be extremely helpful. While players operated in spaces that lacked mana, the harsh environments would affect their ability to learn and grow, even with the support of their mana bodies. While Shifeng and the others quietly observed their surroundings, the phantom of a goddess in dark blue armor appeared before them all. "I am this Legacy Gate's creator, Eliade. Trial taker, you have 2 days to climb the sacred mountain and pass the trial. If you fail, you will be removed from this place. Only if 3 or more of you reach the sacred mountain's first shrine, will you obtain the Starlight Fortress's bronze mark, securing your hold over the fortress. Remember, this is your only opportunity. You will not be allowed to reach this place again for another month," Eliade explained, watching Shifeng carefully. The moment Eliade finished speaking, she vanished as if she had never existed. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Fortunately, we have 2 days. Shifeng breathed out a sigh of relief after listening to the trial's introduction. He had only been given 1 day to ascend the sacred mountain when he had challenged the Bronze Gate in the past, but now, he would have 2 days to complete the trial. Fortunately, this amount of time should be more than enough for Aqua Rose and his other companions to adapt to this environment. This was, after all, the first time they had entered a legacy trial. Before Shifeng could celebrate his good luck, however, 3 knights in exquisite armor appeared on the sacred mountain. Each of the knights carried swords, and the weakest among them was level 110 and tier 3. The moment these knights manifested, they charged toward Shifeng. The knights were quick, and despite the lack of mana in the area, dense mana surrounded each of them. 3 knights with fully unlocked mana bodies, right off the bat. Shifeng was stunned as he watched the approaching knights. Chapter 2463, Basic Unlock. Chapter 2463, Basic Unlock. Sensing the intense amount of mana that coated the NPC knights' swords, Shifeng wasn't willing to take unnecessary risks. He immediately unsheathed both of his swords and prepared for battle. He might not have been as worried if his opponents had merely been new Tier 3 NPCs or Tier 3 NPCs below level 100, but against 3 level 110, Tier 3 NPCs with fully unlocked mana bodies, he'd lose his life with the slightest mistake. The difference between a locked mana body and one that has been unlocked was like the difference between a refinement realm expert and an ordinary player. This was why some Tier 3 NPCs could serve as magistrates in the various kingdoms and empires, while others could only serve as a town or city's guard captain. Some weaker Tier 3 NPCs were even limited to guarding a palace's entrance. These different statuses were a result of the state of the NPC's mana bodies. Any Tier 3 NPC that could unlock their mana body's full potential would be an elite among those of the same tier. They were no longer ordinary NPCs, but experts. These Tier 3 NPCs could beat expert players to a pulp as easily as ordinary players. Reaching their target, the 3 NPC knights slashed their swords at Shifeng from different directions. The knights were perfectly in sync, as if they had been comrades in battle for over a dozen years. 2 of the knights attempted to distract Shifeng, while one attacked his blind spot. Furthermore, their attacks were powerful enough to throw great lords of the same level. If any other Tier 3 player stood in Shifeng's place, it wouldn't be long before they were defeated. Unfortunately, the 3 knights couldn't fool Shifeng. As a domain realm expert, he quickly determined their attack trajectories. Shifeng instantly countered the knight attacking his blind spot, forcibly altering the knight's attack trajectory and guiding the weapon to collide with the other 2 knights' swords. Peng! 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 The 3 knights stumbled back as a result of the collision, but Shifeng didn't get off scot-free. He also stumbled half a step back, and his right arm trembled slightly from the impact. So, this is a Golden Gates trial? Shifeng glanced down at Killing Ray, which vibrated with a low hum, astonished. He couldn't help but worry for Aqua Rose and the others. There was almost no mana in this world, and because of that, Aqua Rose and his other companions would be lucky if they could exhibit half of their normal combat power, even with the help of their mana bodies. Shifeng's first clash with the three knights had been brief, but he could tell that his opponent's combat standards were on par with the Trial Tower's 5th floor. Their combat standards might not be very high, but he was sure they had silver rank mana bodies. Otherwise, there was no way a single clash would cause his arm to go numb with his basic attributes. If even he struggled, it was easy to imagine how the others might fare. Moreover, he was only at the foot of the mountain. He hadn't even started to climb it yet. Ascending the mountain was the goal of this legacy trial, and as players climbed higher, they'd face stronger opponents. Fortunately, they weren't actually required to kill their opponents. As long as players survived against the mountain's residents for 30 minutes, they'd be allowed to pass, but that was still a challenging task. PvP fights rarely lasted more than 10 minutes, not to mention fights against NPCs, since such high-intensity battles required a lot of stamina and concentration. However, during his first clash with the knights, Shifeng sensed the NPCs' mana circuits and how they used the mana within them. Normally, sensing such things in the outside world was quite difficult due to the abundant mana in the area, but the Legacy Gate space had barely any. As a result, the flow of mana within the NPC knights was easily noticeable. Shifeng wasn't a magical class player, but he could clearly sense their mana flow. Only, because these knights only possessed silver mana bodies, their mana body's construction was far simpler than Shifeng's epic ranked mana body. He wouldn't gain much insight from watching these knights fight. Even so, he'd gain more information than he had from unlocking his past bronze mana body. After Shifeng had shoved the three knights back, they quickly regained their postures and launched another attack, giving Shifeng no time to catch a break. This time, however, the knights opted for a different approach. One of the knights focused on attacking Shifeng, while the other two consolidated their mana and waited for an opening. The knights now knew that they were no match for Shifeng's techniques, and they had decided to overwhelm him with brute force. It left Shifeng in a difficult position. His basic attributes were definitely higher than the Tier 3 knights, but with their mana empowering their swords, Shifeng couldn't block the weapons without repercussions. He had no choice but to dodge and retreat. Fortunately, the mana only increased the force behind the knights' attacks, it did not increase their damage. 10 minutes. 15 minutes. 20 minutes. As the battle progressed, Shifeng's excitement grew. He had learned and mimicked the method the knights used to conduct and use the mana within their mana bodies. It was like learning to draw a new magic array. The knights charged at him again, and Shifeng silently guided the mana in his body outward, enveloping his sacred sword. This should be enough. He then swung Killing Ray at the Tier 3 knights' mana-coated swords. Boom! The sound of an explosion echoed from the foot of the mountain. The impact from the blow shoved the three Tier 3 knights stumbling back a step. In contrast, Shifeng remained steady in his original position, and his arm no longer shook. Suddenly, the sound of a system notification reached Shifeng's ears. System, you have unlocked 5% of your epic mana body. I've finally grasped the method to unlock my mana body. Shifeng was ecstatic as he glanced down at his weapon. He had finally learned to mimic the way these knights conducted and used their mana. Of course, he could not mimic the knights' methods perfectly, since they weren't compatible with his mana body. He needed to modify his approach. Moreover, he possessed an epic mana body, which had a more complex structure than a silver mana body. This was why he had only unlocked 5% of his mana body with that attack. It's no wonder why so many experts fought to enter gold gates in the past. I've made more than a fortnight's progress in less than half an hour. Seeing the three NPCs eye him hostilely, Shifeng realized how astoundingly effective it was to train within a gold gates legacy trial. If an expert with a silver mana body stood in his place, they would have likely unlocked all of their mana body with one trip. These knights had offered a perfect example of how to do so, after all, and this environment was the perfect place to observe others' mana bodies. This simply wasn't possible in the outside world. Following which, Shifeng challenged the next group of NPC knights. He wanted to familiarize himself and adapt to the new sensation as quickly as possible. The second group consisted of 6 NPC knights, and they used a completely different method to employ their mana bodies. Individually, they were about as strong as the first 3 knights, but in the end, they were nothing more than lab rats for Shifeng as he further optimized his epic mana body. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Not only did Shifeng encounter more knights as he climbed the mountain, but the knights also had higher-ranked mana bodies. The first knights only had basic silver mana bodies, but eventually, Shifeng faced NPCs with intermediate silver and advanced silver mana bodies. As a result, Shifeng was able to continue refining his epic mana body. 10%, 15%, 20%. After more than 7 hours of combat and completing his challenge against 6 Tier 3 knights with peak silver mana bodies, Shifeng finally reached the Sacred Mountain's first shrine. After Shifeng entered the first shrine, Eliade, the goddess in dark blue armor, appeared before him again. Eliade radiated an aura that was even beyond that of Tier 5 beings. Trial taker, you have proven to be quite skilled. You have reached the first shrine within 9 hours. As a reward for your effort, I will present you with 2 options. The first option consists of surviving 3 moves against me. Not only will you clear this trial and enter the mountain's second level by succeeding, but you'll also receive 1 legacy guidance. If you choose the second option, you will have to face this shrine's guardian. If you win, you will gain access to the second level, but you will not receive additional rewards, Eliade offered Shifeng. You have 3 minutes to consider. Decide carefully. Chapter 2464, 3 Divine Swords. Chapter 2464, 3 Divine Swords. Once Eliade finished speaking, she closed her eyes and waited for Shifeng's reply in silence. She showed no intention of speaking further. Players actually have a chance to earn a legacy guidance in a gold gate. The goddess's explanation had stunned Shifeng. Based on what he knew from the past, the legacy gate's creators were lofty beings. They'd only appear before players at the beginning of the legacy trial to explain the rules. Players shouldn't encounter them again after that. Shifeng had never expected that not only would Eliade appear before him near the Sacred Mountain's first shrine, but she'd also offer him 2 choices. Moreover, one of the 2 options would afford him the chance to obtain a legacy guidance. If the experts from his previous life found out about this, they'd try to kill him out of jealousy. Players didn't receive any guidance after reaching Tier 3 in God's domain. They'd have to rely on their own abilities to grow stronger, especially when trying to unlock their mana bodies. Even within the legacy trials, players could only rely on their observations to learn and improve. They wouldn't be given anything on a silver platter. Thus, receiving a legacy guidance was every expert player's dream. Unlocking a mana body's full potential was only a basic condition to activating a Tier 3 mana body. If players could unlock more of their mana body's potential, it could offer even greater benefits. However, unlocking more of a mana body's full potential was insanely difficult. If players had taken the wrong path during their early days, they'd have almost no chance of surpassing 100% potential. Players would have to settle for the most basic level of mana body. If all players were offered a chance to receive guidance from an ancient legacies, far more of the past's peak experts would have been able to reach Tier 5. The stronger a player's mana body was, the easier it'd be to complete their future promotion quests. This was why some experts with silver mana bodies had reached Tier 5, while some experts with gold mana bodies had been stuck at Tier 4. When Eliade had presented Shifeng with 2 options, he had felt as if he were dreaming. Lady Eliade, I choose your challenge. Shifeng instantly decided. Challenging Eliade was undoubtedly reckless, but if he missed this opportunity, he'd regret it for the rest of his life. Even if he couldn't take control of the Starlight Fortress's Fortress Lord's mansion now, he could try again after the token's cooldown. However, if he passed up this opportunity to challenge Eliade, he might not get another chance to earn a legacy guidance. He had an epic mana body, and unlocking its potential would be far more difficult than with a gold mana body. Just trying to unlock 100% of its potential was an immensely difficult challenge, not to mention unlocking more than that. Excellent. You have made a wise decision. You will not receive another chance to challenge me, let alone obtain a legacy guidance, no matter how many times you come here, Eliade said as she opened her eyes. When she looked at Shifeng, a hint of recognition flashed in her eyes. However, don't think that you can withstand 3 of my attacks. Even if I limit my strength to tier 3, you have less than a 10% chance of completing my challenge with your sealed epic mana body. Eliade then pulled a blue great sword, whose tip had been buried in the ground before her, and raised it above her head. A frightening amount of mana suddenly surrounded her, and a mana storm manifested around Eliade's great sword. The storm was so powerful that it could even tear apart space. Shifeng could sense that the phenomena weren't due to a skill or spell. Eliade was merely executing a normal attack. Now, face me. First sword, light shadow. As she spoke those words, Eliade swung her greatsword down at Shifeng, who stood over 40 yards away. A gigantic blade of mana appeared in the goddess's hands and descended on Shifeng, splitting apart space as it passed. So, this is the true method of utilizing a mana body? Shifeng was dumbfounded as the blade grew near. He had met many tier 5 NPCs, but he had never met one that had such mastery over their mana body. Although Eliade had suppressed her strength to tier 3, her normal attacks still had the power of a tier 4 skill. Without hesitation, Shifeng activated Heavenly Dragon's power. The legacy trial was located in a different realm. Although players were prohibited from using invulnerability skills, they could use any other skills or spells they possessed. This was why Shifeng dared to accept Eliade's challenge. Divine runes immediately appeared around Shifeng's body, substantially increasing his strength. He then brandished his swords at the descending mana weapon. Secret technique, lightning flash, boom. When the weapons collided, the impact created a powerful shockwave that shook the surrounding area. Even the ground trembled at its might. The boom of the collision echoed across the entire sacred mountain. A figure then shot out of the dust cloud that encompassed the battlefield. It was none other than Shifeng. Not only had he lost 1/5 of his HP, but he also failed to stabilize his footing after he landed, tumbling to the ground. Before Shifeng could return to his feet, however, the goddess was already poised to attack again. This time, however, she positioned her sword beside her, prepared to execute a horizontal slash. Second sword, Holy Devour. Another mana storm brewed around her, threatening to devour everything in its path. This time, Shifeng could feel the storm suck away the mana within him, and the pressure that bore down on him made it somewhat difficult to move. Shifeng had no time to respond properly before the Eliade swung her great sword. A torrent of fire manifested before Shifeng, destabilizing space around it. These flames raged as if they needed to devour everything they touched, including space. These flames were more than twice as powerful as the earlier mana sword. Are you kidding me? Shifeng's shock reached unprecedented levels as he watched the torrent of fire blast toward him. Normally, not even heroes could exhibit basic tier 4 power with normal tier 3 attacks, but not only did the goddess's horizontal swing contain tier 4 power, but it was also at the intermediate rank. No one would believe him if he retold this tale. Despite his surprise, however, Shifeng didn't hesitate. Realizing that he couldn't afford to hold back, Shifeng activated Blade Liberation and executed Lightning Flash once more. Boom! Space exploded the moment the two fighters' weapons met. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Like before, Eliade's attack sent Shifeng flying, and this time, it left him with less than 50% of his HP. However, before Shifeng could stand up, he heard Eliade's voice. Third sword, Holy Annihilation. Eliade showed no intention of slowing her assault. Leaping into the air, she rose above Shifeng and swung her greatsword downward. This time, the goddess's attack didn't include any mana fluctuations, but Shifeng discovered that he couldn't move. He felt as if he were surrounded by enemies, and he could only watch as Eliade's great sword descended toward him. This attack was many times stronger than her second swing. Power of Destruction, activate. Chapter 2465, Silver Mark. Chapter 2465, Silver Mark. Along with Shifeng's low shout, disintegration power started flowing out of the disintegration armor and set the surrounding space aquiver. At the same time, a portion of the disintegration power entered Shifeng's body, instantly elevating him to the Tier 4 realm. Suddenly, the spatial restrictions and frightening pressure that originally bound Shifeng's body weakened considerably, allowing him to move again. However, despite these changes, he did not feel safe. On the contrary, his complexion turned even grimmer than before. Previously, when he was still at Tier 3, he had felt that Eliade's current attack did not carry as much mana as her second attack. However, after reaching Tier 4, he realized just how wrong he was. Currently, the space within 50 yards of Eliade was actually filled with mana as dense as steel. In God's domain, mana's existence was akin to air. It would condense into a misty state only after reaching a sufficiently high density. However, the mana surrounding Eliade had surpassed the misty and liquid states. Normally, in God's domain, the more refined the mana was, the greater the energy it would contain. Take mana that was in a gaseous state and mana that had concentrated into magic crystals. The amounts of energy each contained were worlds apart. Seeing Eliade's frightening attack descending toward him, Shifeng pushed his 5 senses to their very limits and executed his strongest skill, Void Slash, inwardly praying, "You must block it." In the next moment, 6 sword lights appeared from the void, then merged into one to meet Eliade's great sword. Combined with the effects of all of Shifeng's berserk skills, this attack could be said to be the peak of Shifeng's current capabilities. In fact, he had even executed Void Slash at a 100% completion rate. The power of this attack could undoubtedly send mythic monsters of the same level flying. Most likely, even Tier 4 NPCs would be no exception. Boom! A deafening boom echoed throughout the surroundings after the attacks of both sides collided. The entire sacred mountain had even started trembling slightly. In the next moment, a figure flew out of the sacred mountain's first shrine and landed right at the foot of the sacred mountain, creating a crater that was over 3 meters deep. What a pity! I have waited a long time for a challenger with an epic mana body to show up. If only he had unlocked his mana body before coming here. Combined with the power of a Tier 4 existence, he might have been able to withstand my final move, Eliade said to herself, sighing when she saw Shifeng disappearing from the shrine. However, just as she was about to leave, she suddenly sensed something. Her figure then disappeared from the shrine and reappeared at the mountain's foot. To be precise, she appeared beside the crater of Shifeng's crash. He didn't die. Surprise flashed in Eliade's eyes for the first time when she saw Shifeng getting to his feet in the crater. Despite the swordsman receiving her attack, his HP had not decreased by even a single point. Only, visible spatial cracks surrounded him. However, these cracks were mending themselves, and eventually, a perfect barrier formed around him. How close! If I didn't have the Nightwalker's cape's void shield, that attack definitely would have killed me. Shifeng breathed out a sigh of relief as he looked at the barrier protecting him. He had still underestimated Eliade's final attack. That final attack was even stronger than those of the Crimson Dragon flying ship's mana pulse cannons, practically rivaling the flying ship's magic elven cannons already. He had never heard of anyone exhibiting power at the peak of Tier 4 with merely a normal Tier 3 attack. Fortunately, he had more than one fragmented legendary item on him, one of which was even for defense. Otherwise, only death awaited him in this trial. After inwardly celebrating for a moment, Shifeng climbed out of the crater quickly and walked up to Eliade. "Lady Eliade, may I know if I passed your trial?" Shifeng asked as he looked at the goddess. Although he survived, he had been sent flying all the way down the sacred mountain. Since his agreement with Eliade was for him to receive 3 of her moves, he wasn't sure if getting sent flying out of the shrine was already grounds for disqualification. Eliade had not stated the conditions for qualifications clearly. "You passed," Eliade said, nodding. "Moreover, your performance was excellent. You actually managed to receive 3 of my moves without having unlocked your Tier 3 mana body. Of all the challengers I have come across throughout the years, you are the first to accomplish such a feat. As a reward, I will grant you not only a legacy guidance but also the Starlight Fortress's silver mark." After saying so, Eliade drew a silver rune in the air and imprinted it on the Fortress Lord's token tied around Shifeng's wrist. "System, congratulations. You have obtained the Silver Mark and become the Starlight Fortress's Silver Lord. You may freely enter the Fortress Lord's mansion and make use of the Starlight Fortress's advanced functions. System: you have completed the challenge of the Legacy Gates creator. Rewarding level +1 and 1 legacy guidance from Eliade. Upon receiving the series of system notifications, Shifeng fell into a daze. He never thought that the rewards for this challenge would be so generous. Just the opportunity to receive a legacy guidance was already as valuable as a fragmented legendary item. In fact, if the peak experts of his previous life had known about this, they might have even willingly exchanged a fragmented legendary item just to receive a legacy guidance. After all, in God's domain, one's own strength had the utmost priority. External items such as weapons and equipment only served to bolster a person's existing strength. Moreover, so long as one was sufficiently strong, obtaining fragmented legendary items was not that difficult a task. Take the independent experts of adventurer teams, for example. Despite these experts not having any major corporations or superpowers backing them, some of them had still reached the apex of God's domain. Meanwhile, these people had accomplished this feat by relying entirely on their own strength. However, aside from receiving a legacy guidance, he had actually received the Starlight Fortress's Silver Mark as well. If the various superpowers in his previous life were to find out about this, they would definitely want to eat him alive. In the past, in order to increase their authority in the ancient fortresses they controlled, the various superpowers had invested countless manpower and resources into nurturing their peak experts. However, extremely few superpowers had managed to obtain an ancient fortress's Silver Mark, especially for ancient fortresses that housed a gold gate. This was because the Silver Mark was no longer something just a handful of peak experts could attain. Obtaining a Silver Mark from a legacy gate required 10 experts to clear the Sacred Mountain's second shrine and 3 experts to reach the Sacred Mountain's peak within one challenge attempt. Moreover, the difficulty of a Sacred Mountain's second level was far greater than that of the first level. The Sacred Mountain's first level served as a foundational level for the legacy trial. It functioned more as an educational tool than a challenge. However, it was a different story once players reached the Sacred Mountain's second level. The second level and beyond would differentiate the strong from the weak. They were not meant to teach players anything, and all that players could do on these levels was figure out a way to survive. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. In the case of the second level of a Bronze Gate Sacred Mountain, Tier 3 players would face Tier 3 heroic spirits that possessed extremely high combat standards. The weakest among them could rival half-step refinement realm experts. Even worse, players had to go up against multiple heroic spirits simultaneously. As for the third level, rumor had it that the opponents were bona fide Tier 3 heroes. Of course, players were no longer required to survive for as long as 30 minutes on the second level and beyond. Nevertheless, they still needed to last 10 minutes. If even the Bronze Gates trial was already so arduous, Shifeng did not even dare imagine what kind of opponents awaited him on the second level of the Gold Gates trial. Alright, you have a choice to make. Do you wish to receive guidance on how to unlock your epic mana body, or do you wish to receive guidance on mana techniques? Eliade asked as she looked at Shifeng's stunned expression. Chapter 2466, Heavenly Blue Successor. There's also the option to learn mana techniques. Chapter 2466, Heavenly Blue Successor. There's also the option to learn mana techniques. Shifeng could not help but hesitate when he heard the options Eliade gave him. Mana technique was a familiar term, a mana usage technique that players could use only after reaching Tier 3 and obtaining their mana body. It was categorized as a type of combat technique in God's domain. Only, combat techniques focused on the usage of a person's physical body for combat, while mana techniques focused on the usage of a person's mana for the same. However, only an extremely small number of players had the opportunity to learn mana techniques in God's domain because the knowledge had long been lost. Normally, players had to rely on their own inspiration to create mana techniques. As for Shifeng, even after playing God's domain for a decade during his previous life, he never managed to learn a single mana technique. If it were before he had witnessed Eliade's 3 attacks, he would have most likely chosen to receive guidance on how to unlock his epic mana body without any hesitation. This was because the mana techniques he had seen experts use in his previous life hadn't been particularly powerful. Those mana techniques only bolstered the strength of existing skills and spells slightly, not even as useful as combat techniques. However, from the goddess's attacks, it would seem that he had been under a misconception. After all, Eliade's mana techniques allowed her to exhibit strength at the peak of Tier 4 despite having suppressed herself to Tier 3. The strength of her mana techniques was many times superior to bronze combat techniques. Of course, part of the reason why she could exhibit such strength with her mana technique was her high comprehension of the technique. Even so, this had still allowed Shifeng to get a general idea of the power of mana techniques. If he could master Eliade's third sword, Holy Annihilation, then he really would be able to move unhindered through the entire God's domain. Normally, players had to rely on legendary items to transcend tiers. Moreover, the higher one's tier was, the more difficult it would be to transcend tiers. Just the gap between Tier 3 and Tier 4 was already massive. Even with a legendary item, the best a Tier 3 player could do when fighting a Tier 4 player of equal combat standards would be a draw. It would take more than just a legendary item to win against a bona fide Tier 4 player. Eliade's mana techniques, on the other hand, only needed one to unlock their mana body to transcend tiers. Meanwhile, given sufficient time, players could unlock even epic mana bodies to 100% potential. You have 30 seconds to consider. If you don't make a decision, I will take it as you giving up the opportunity to learn. You have only this one chance, so I hope you consider your decision well, Eliade said as she looked at Shifeng. As soon as Eliade finished speaking, a system timer appeared before him, the timer counting down the seconds. 30 seconds. 25 seconds. 20 seconds. The ticking sounds were like a countdown to death, and they stimulated Shifeng's mind. He had only this one opportunity to learn a mana technique. After he mastered it, he could even teach it to others. This mana technique would be a great help for Zero Wing's future. However, if he wished to unlock his epic mana body past 100% potential, he could only rely on Eliade's guidance. Otherwise, on his own, the chances of him breaking through the 100% threshold were practically zero. You have 10 more seconds to consider, Eliade reminded when she saw Shifeng still in deep thought. However, Eliade's reminder did not catch Shifeng's attention. On the contrary, he sank even deeper into thought now. You have 5 seconds left, Eliade prompted once more. Decide. At Eliade's final reminder, Shifeng snapped out of his daze and took a deep breath. Lady Eliade, I choose the guidance on my epic mana body, Shifeng said with determination. Are you certain? Eliade asked, gazing at him seriously. I am very certain, Shifeng confirmed, nodding. In his opinion, a mana technique was indeed amazing. In fact, the value of Eliade's mana technique surpassed even the value of legendary items. However, gaining the ability to unlock his epic mana body past the 100% threshold was much more important since a player's mana body was the foundation for everything. In his previous life, every player that had set foot into the realm of Tier 6 had broken through the 100% threshold. If he wanted to have a chance at reaching Tier 6, then he had to develop his mana body beyond 100%. As for Eliade's mana technique, while it indeed could increase players' combat power by a substantial degree, tiers trumped everything else. This was especially true for Tier 6. Even if said Tier 5 player was armed with an extremely powerful legendary weapon, they would, at most, be able to fight the weakest of Tier 6 players to a standstill. Defeating a Tier 6 player would be utterly impossible. Needless to say, it would be the same when relying on mana techniques. During ancient times, humans possessed complete mana technique legacies. Nevertheless, they were still incapable of contending against Tier 6 gods. Hence, tiers were everything in God's domain. Take the current God's domain, for example. Tier 2 players were helpless against Tier 3 players. This was the case even for the various superpowers Tier 2 experts. Currently, the various superpowers could compete with each other only by using Tier 3 players. Even if Tier 2 players were amazing and could defeat current Tier 3 experts, if they were incapable of promoting to Tier 3 themselves, it was only a matter of time before they were left behind by Tier 3 players in terms of basic attributes as players reached higher levels. Excellent. When Eliade heard Shifeng's determined reply, an exquisite smile appeared on her flawless face. At the same time, the sound of a system notification entered Shifeng's ears once more. System, congratulations. You have passed the hidden trial selection of power and received Eliade's recognition. A hidden trial? Shifeng received a fright when he heard this system notification. He never thought that this challenge would actually include a hidden trial. NPCs in God's domain had different personalities. Normally, they only gave players straightforward trials. However, there were NPCs that would give players double trials. In the case of these double trials, if players failed to clear the hidden trial, clearing the surface trial would be meaningless. They still wouldn't receive any rewards. Since you have chosen to seek guidance on your mana body, it seems you have not been misled by the temptation of power. During ancient times, humans have constantly pursued the ultimate strength. Although they eventually obtained this ultimate strength, they also faced destruction because of it, Eliade said. In a pleased tone, she continued, you, however, did not fall prey to the power I displayed. You have passed my trial. From now onward, you are my successor and are qualified to obtain my legacy. System, congratulations. You have completed the challenge of the Heavenly Blue Saint, Eliade, and become her successor. Rewarding Mana Body Legacy and Holy Annihilation Technique Legacy. After the system notification ended, Eliade took out 2 memory crystals that gave off a colorful glow and handed them to Shifeng. Of these 2 memory crystals, one of them records the method to unlock epic mana bodies, and the other records the mana technique I created. You may use each of them only once. I hope you utilize them properly, Eliade said before vanishing without a trace, leaving behind only a stunned Shifeng at the foot of the sacred mountain. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. That was really close. Shifeng sighed in relief after Eliade disappeared. If not for him having long known the importance of the mana body and the strength of tears, he would have most likely chosen Eliade's mana technique instead. After all, from what he had seen, Eliade's mana technique would provide players with a huge boost in combat power. So long as current Tier 3 players learned Eliade's mana technique, their combat power would soar to the peak of Tier 3, possibly even the Tier 4 standard. Meanwhile, if one possessed Tier 4 combat power at this stage of the game, they would definitely be invincible among players. Who could possibly resist such a temptation? However, if he had really chosen to acquire Eliade's mana technique, he would have ended up with nothing at all. Now that I have obtained the mark and legacy, it's time to return. After snapping out of his daze, Shifeng stored the 2 memory crystals before making his way to the teleportation array for leaving the sacred mountain. He did not hurry to use the memory crystals. After all, they were one-off items. How much knowledge he could absorb from them would depend entirely on himself. It would be a huge waste if he did not use the memory crystals in an ideal state and environment. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,